So if we were to define worship, how should you define worship? It's the cookie cutter answer of making sure that it's showing love or reverence or usually to something of extreme worth. It's a verb. Worship is. It's an action. It's a doing. But I think as easy as we can define it, or as complicated as you can define it, it's just as easy or as complicated to mess it up. I want to specifically focus on living a life of worship because, as we saw, we call this worship, standing up here or corporately praising God, but that's just like a tiny little amount. It's a super important amount, like that part of coming together and collectively giving our praise to God, but it can't just be a Sunday morning action. It has to be an action lived out through. And usually the thing that messes it up the most is pride, which is why we're going to go to Obadiah, because we're going to talk about the definition, but we're going to talk about the issue, the denied part of it, and the denial part of it usually involves us removing part of ourselves. Mikey and I talk about pride a lot because, one, we need to stay humble in everything we do because it's nothing that I can do. There's no power I have to do any of it. It's all God through us. And if we miss that, then you miss worship completely. It's not this thing that we just did. It's so much more than that. So if we go to Obadiah, before we go, let's back up. So a while ago, I sent a message out to a couple guys, and I was like, so I saw this crazy video, and it hit me really, really, really wrong. And this is why I want to talk about worship. The video was two guys that aren't Christian, aren't saved, and I didn't know that to start, but it was really evident as the video went on because they were talking about heaven and hell. Well, hell's the place I don't want to go, for sure. But the guy said, yeah, but, heaven doesn't sound that great. I don't want to sing forever. I'm not a big singing guy, and I definitely don't want to be in a choir for the rest of my life. And it really made me think, we don't get it. If that's what we think, because in our brains, that's what worship is that singing thing. Which, don't get me wrong, fellas, you've heard it a lot at Kingdom Men. We should be in examples right here when we're singing, and we should be louder than everybody else. We should be an example to everybody around us. Husbands, you should be an example to your whole family. You should be singing in here and calling you out from the pulpit. You guys should all be singing. My dad is the most manly guy I can think of. Put it this way. When we think of manliness, we think of muscles, and so my dad did this thing. So my dad's 5. He'll say 5'11". He's probably about 5'10". We'll give him the 11-inch since he's not here. But he was doing this training just to keep in shape, but he was obsessed with this world's strongest man thing. And so he took a telephone pole, and it was 6 foot, he got a 6 foot section, okay? And he took a chainsaw, cut out 2 slots in it, just like a little wedge, so that he could get down to the middle of it, and he ran a bar through it. And he went outside, and he would deadlift this thing. How much does this thing weigh? I don't know. Has anybody ever messed with a telephone pole? They're not light at all. I can't even, a section I was probably 9 or 10, I couldn't even move that thing. And he would go out there and he would lift it. And so he had the biggest arms, like his arms were bigger than my head kind of thing. And so to me, it was the most, in my eyes, it was that's like a man, right? But in the same sense, he wasn't a big singing guy, but God shaped him to be that way. You know why? Because he realized that it wasn't for him. He was giving it back to God. So he would stand, he would stand in this church, and he was by himself singing as a single guy. And it's wild because all of a sudden, because he's one of the few guys singing, somebody's like, hey, do you want to be the song leader? And so he became the song leader. Fun fact, fellas, this is how he met my mom. My mom was a piano player. So singing might get you somewhere if you start, but that was for free. Thanks, Dad. You gave somebody a path. But,
Hey, Mike might not like that.
And also talking about singing particularly, so I have a cousin who, he's a pastor and one of the associate pastors in a church in Omaha, and he is what you would call not a great singer. If it's in a key, he has no idea what that means, okay? But he defines the joyfulness of it. He will sing louder than you, and he does not care what you think, because he's not singing for you. And it's those kind of things that we got to start capturing. But we have to examine it ourselves, just like Obadiah is going to do here, and look at the things that we're putting in between us and God. That's kind of a summary of what this is. But Obadiah specifically, so Obadiah is mentioned in the Bible one time in Obadiah. He's one of the prophets. If you like the history stuff, he's actually not referenced in the New Testament at all. I mean, what he says kind of wraps up with the end of the New Testament, but specifically, like, he was never quoted in the New Testament. What had happened is a group of people came and conquered the Israelites, and so then he wrote this about a certain group of people that they're the Edomites, so they're from Edom, and Edom ties back to Esau. So there's kind of a lineage here, and when you really break it down, you see how pride starts to get in their way. We're going to go down to verse 10. So Obadiah 10. One of the few times you can just say Obadiah. We're going to do Obadiah 10 through 21, and not mean chapters. But the first 10 or 9 verses are Obadiah talking specifically about Edom and what they did. And what they did is they waited for, I believe it's probably like the Philistines and the Arabians came in and conquered them. Some people think it's the Babylonians. There's no reference to, because the Babylonians would have destroyed the temple, and there's no reference to that in here. So there's all your history lesson. But Obadiah talks about Edom specifically and how what they're doing is wrong. Because not only are they the neighbors, and they're not only just sitting back and watching, they're gloating about it, and they're partaking. So they're going down, they're killing people that are trying to get back, they're taking possessions. It's almost the worst part of it. They're not the conquering land, they're the third party coming in and just kind of taking what they want and doing what they want. Okay, so there's your history. We're going to start in 10. And there are going to be some names. They're not as important for what we're talking about, but bear with me as I try to pronounce them. So, verse 10, because of the violence done to you, brother Jacob, done to your brother Jacob, shame shall cover you, and you shall be cut off forever. On the day that you stood aloft, on the day that the strangers carried off his wealth, and foreigners entered his gates, and cast lots for Jerusalem, you were like one of them. But do not gloat over the day of your brother in the day of his misfortune. Do not rejoice over the prophet Judah, of the people of Judah, in the day of their ruin. Do not boast in the day of the distress. Do not enter the gates of my people in the day of their calamity. Do not gloat over his disaster in the day of his calamity. Do not loot his wealth in the day of his calamity. Do not stand at the crossroads to cut off his fugitives. Do not hand over his survivors in the day of the distress. For the day of the Lord is near upon all nations. All right, so right here we're taking a turn, and we're going from specifically Edom, and we're adding more to it. Okay, so let's keep going. 15, for the day of the Lord is upon all nations. As you have done it, it shall be done to you. Your deed shall return on your own head. For as you have drunk on my holy mountain, so all the nations shall drink continually. They shall drink and swallow, and shall be as though they had never been. But in Mount Zion there will be those who escape, and it shall be holy. And the house of Jacob shall possess their own possessions, and the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau stubble. They shall burn them and consume them, and there shall be no survivors in the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken. So we're going to pause right there and take all that in, because it is very much, when we look at what they're talking about, let's trace this back. So if we're talking about Edom traces all the roots back to Esau. Where does Israel trace theirs back? Whose name was changed to Israel? Jacob. So we're all these are descendants of Abraham, but it's in that split, right? It's the Jacob that he chose, and Esau was the fool that gave away his birthright. It's that split. Okay, that's where we're talking about. Interesting. Edom actually is spelt the same way as Adam in Hebrew. And anybody know what Adam stands for in Hebrew? Humanity, mankind. So, what are we actually talking about here? We're talking about everybody. We're talking about God being just in everything he does, and because of his justice, there will be a punishment for it. All right, so let's go to 19. It says, those of the Negeb shall possess Mount Esau, and those of the Shephelah shall possess the land of Philistines. They shall possess the land of Ephraim and the land of Samaria, and Benjamin shall possess Gilead. The exiles of this host of the people of Israel shall possess the land of the Canaanites as far as the Zareph. And the exiles of Jerusalem who are in Cedaraph shall possess the cities of Negeb. Saviors shall go upon to Mount Zion to rule Mount Esau, and the kingdom shall be the Lord's. Fun fact, I just deleted all my notes, so this is going to be really fun. So when we're looking at this, we have to understand a major thing here. At the end, verse 21 is such a pivotal verse for all this, because when we're talking about saviors or descendants or whatever it is, we're talking about us. We're talking about the people of God, the people that make it to Mount Zion. And where is our salvation found? Anybody? Only. And it's only through his grace, it's only through his mercy that any of this is possible. So if we look at this, we need to see God's justice in this, and opposed from God's justice is our human nature, our sin. And we need to understand that what's the only thing that can overcome our sin? God's gift of salvation, right? So if we hone in on the idea of pride and how pride gets in the way, because that's what we're looking at here is pride being in the way. Because if you go back to this idea of Esau breaking off, it's this anger. But where does this anger come from? Well, from this one situation specifically, right? Well, hold on. More than that. It's because he couldn't swallow his pride and understand the situation and understand that God was in control. What does that sound like? Us, all the time. All the time. God, I'm going to give you this, as long as, like, we always have, there's a condition that we add to it constantly. So if we break it all down and we look at the idea of our humanness, our humanity getting in the way, the flesh, whatever you want to call it, it will, Eddie says it constantly pulls us back into the mud, right? Well, how do we break of that? Well, it's self-examining. On Wednesday night, in the middle of the lesson, like, we stopped and prayed, and it was like a self-reflecting prayer of what's in our life that's between us and God. What have we not repented of? There are idols that we're putting in front, and it's usually because of our pride. There's idols that we put in between us and God. That video showed sports, and it showed exercise. It showed all that. It's the idea of there are things that taint our worship. Our offering we're trying to give to God isn't what it should be. It never will be worth it, because, I mean, when you're talking about it, there's nothing that's ever worth it. But the idea of us trying to give something back to God, I mean, what's the song, Gratitude? It's all I have, is a heart of gratitude. So what is it that we're putting in place? What is it that we're putting in the middle of us? So Joby Martin says the three most dangerous words a Christian can ever say is, I got this, because we have to understand that we don't. That's the whole point of the gospel, is we don't have it. And it's our pride, and it's our wanting to control the situation that constantly gets in the way. If you want to know, like, top three things that drive me crazy, it's like people that want to micromanage everything, because I don't like to micromanage anything at all. I like to step back, see the 50 or the 500-foot view, and this is like a tech thing. Like, you want to see the whole thing so you can understand it, and then help support people in places to make it all function properly. It's exactly how we should be as a church, as Jesus, as the one, and Jesus has you in this place, and has you in this place, and has you in this place, to help it all function properly. All with what main goal? I mean, why are we a Christian? But I thought it was for heaven. I thought that's why we were supposed to be a Christian, so we can get to heaven. That's just a result. That's not what we're here for. Do you see how it all works around together? So it's us removing pride and removing our self, basically. I've said it before. There's the analogy of a guy that has a dresser, and he opens the top drawer, and he takes his Bible, and he takes his journaling and his prayer journal, and all. He puts all the God things are in the top drawer, the most important drawer. And he closes that, and he opens it up, and then, all right, so this is where my wife and my kids, and it all goes in the second drawer, the family drawer. Then friends, and so on and so forth. And the problem is, it's not our dresser. And until we understand that it's not our life, then pride will constantly get in the way. The flesh will constantly get in the way. You can take almost every sin that you can think of, and it all functions back to the fact that you want control, and that is your pride getting in the way. Because at the end of the day, us living a life of worship is a every single day thing. And it is a constant check on yourself, which is in Kingdom Men we just talked about. So we're going through the life of David, and we just talked about Jonathan and how Jonathan is with David. Jonathan surrendered his position. He gave his royal robes over to David, and then he gives him his staff and his bow. And so he's saying, I want you to be the king. I want you to be the protector and the guider, right? And at the same time, they are together as one. They are there to help and support each other. So We talk about having a Paul and a Timothy, and we need a Jonathan right there that we're shoulder to shoulder with through all of this as well, right? The people in your life are important. Your closest friends are important. Are you pouring into somebody? Is somebody pouring into you? Well, what does that mean, Jared? That sounds like a bunch of Christian words. Is somebody helping guide you back to Jesus? Are you helping guide somebody back to Jesus all through the work of the Holy Spirit? And do you have somebody that's standing right next to you that's saying, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, that's not a good way to go. Or supporting you through a difficult situation. If something comes up today, is there somebody that you can call and be like, this is rough. I need some prayer. And honestly, you should have at least 3 people like that, right? If you use Mark as a reference, you should have 4, right? Corner toters. You should have 1 person to pick up your mat and carry you to Jesus. How many people do you have? If you're like, well, I got Jesus, I am glad you do. But if you don't have somebody in like supporting you physically right here, pointing, understand, I'm not saying feeding into you and feeding into your ego or feeding into the area ego. I'm saying pointing you back to Jesus. But you need physical people in your life doing this. We're not meant to do any of this alone. That is why in Acts it's set up to, Eddie talked about it a couple weeks ago, making sure that there's a group of people that you are connecting with constantly. Who is that? Ultimately, that's where the life of worship is going to start pushing through. It's going to be natural. So, pride is a major hang-up in living a life of worship. Pride won't let us truly forgive. And how are we to expect any grace if we can't forgive? 1 Corinthians 13 is like one of those big, love is all this stuff. But the thing that always, it's the part that nobody ever wants to underline. And that love keeps no record of a wrong. But you don't know what they did to me. I do know what we constantly do to Jesus. We constantly put him back on that cross. Constantly. But you don't understand. Like, they betrayed me. I do understand, because it's exactly what we constantly do to Jesus. Do you understand Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you should ever forget everything. But if you just hold everybody at arm's length and you don't let anybody in, you don't have anybody. You're exactly what Eddie was talking about you become the isolated one, and what happens to the isolated one? They get taken off from the pack, as the analogy of the devil being a lion prowling around. He's going to look for the one that's isolated off to the side because they're the easiest to target. And he's going to use that person, and he's going to make sure. Now see, the devil, he doesn't just like take you down. He starts putting things in your head, and he lets you go back into the pack so that you can cause more problems. Our pride and our wanting control does the same thing. I tell, I'm going to say his name because he's not here. I tell Josh all the time, hey, we give the devil way too much power. It's usually just us messing up. It's our flesh that's messing up. So, what is something that we can maybe remove in our lives that's keeping us from God, that's keeping us from a life of worship? And have we given him everything? Or are there still things I don't want anybody to know about this part. So, I don't want to tell God about this. This is the one thing I struggle with this, so I'll be okay. What was that words again? I'll be okay. I got this. But we don't. So Pride and living a life of worship to God can't coexist. It's either about God's complete sufficiency and His grace and His mercy, and honestly, it has nothing to do with us. And it is until we understand that it's all God and none of us, then we're going to constantly struggle with this. Let's pray.